So this is how I converted a simple concept into a working template to the dashboard in just some few steps. So what you see here is a scanning tracker dashboard, and this dashboard is seeking to count the total scan, various locations, yearly scan trend, the monthly scan trend, and each equipment number of scans that have been done. All right, so we have all of these slices in here, which you can actually use to drill the report, or you can slice the report by each week, or you can actually, slice the report by year. So we have the year slicer in here as well, and then also we have all of these equipment over here that you can actually use. So this one actually helps us to look at each equipment scanning, report or whatever. And then we have a scanning summary. This is a summary report where you simply have to select, the dates, and then everything will update. So all the data that relate to a particular date would actually populate. So that is it there. As you can see, there are some changes happening in there. And then again, we have the location slicer, which you can actually use to slice everything. So that's the interesting part, as you can see. Or you could clear the filter, and then you can actually slice by each piece of equipment. So that is how it is when it comes to this report. But the thing is that it's a bit slow because there's a lot of calculations going on at the back end. All right, now this is actually the data set, and that is where you have the equipment, the location, and the calendar over here, and the number of scans that have been done on a daily basis is being collated. So there's actually a calendar over a 2-year period, so it's from 31st December all the way to 30th December 2027. But sometimes when it comes to having a large scope of analysis, sometimes your Excel sheet could be a bit slow unless you really keep it simple. Like this is a calendar that should ideally be for a year, but then the user wanted 2 years and all of that, so we did that for him. And then this is approved list. So there's a list of the scanners and their locations, and then the starting date of the calendar, and this is the source of the drop down list. So basically this is how we started off. I mean, we wanted to know the workflow and the process, workflow basically of the user, because we don't understand their work. This is totally out of my scope in terms of domain expertise, though I could bring in some data analytics skills to bear, because they're just trying to count how many scans have been done or scanning activity has been done by piece of equipment. And so they provided a skeletal structure of how they want things to be. So this is actually a summary report, and they want to see how best they can capture daily, and then within every date that they select, they're going to see the weekly reports, and then the monthly reports, and then the annual reports, and then see like the location and the daily scans based on the date that you select, and then every date that you select within that very week, the week in perspective, the month in perspective. That's pretty much it. So they were trying to apply this to a lot of equipment, and these equipment would then have too many data points that we needed to bring together. So for that reason, we had to restructure this template. Other than that, then look at how it is. They are trying to count daily scans, and then they want a way of actually giving a monthly report on the daily scan that they've done. At the same time, they want to see a yearly report, and they're actually putting everything in the same column. So how do you collate the figure? So obviously, as we're restructuring, we needed to focus on one important parameter, and that is a calendar table, because within the calendar, you're going to have month in there, you're going to have year as well. So there's no point trying to repeat them here. Say like, what is the monthly scan? What is the annual scan? And things like that. And then again, I mean, they're having all of these sheets in there, which is literally the same structure and for different equipment. And what it means is that you have to literally struggle a lot to combine all of this. So we had a way out. And what was way out? We had to create a calendar, dedicated calendar, bringing all these equipment in one column, as you can see, with their location. So once you select a piece of equipment, the location will update automatically. And then every number of scans that are being carried out on a daily basis, you input it for each scanner, just input the data, and that's it. So that actually addresses the problem of having to create a lot of sheets for the same type of information. Instead of just putting the scanner equipment or the scans over here, then you can just count every day how many times you are counting. I mean, how many times these scans have been done. Now, what did we do? After developing the structure, we had to load it into Power Query. So let's go into Power Query and see what we did with this type of data set. So let me just open the query editor right away. So this is basically the clean data, as you can see. But before that, this is how it looked. Okay, it looked like this. So we had basically some extra space at the top, because we want to be very strategic. The scanner itself, the where the date is, where the calendar date is, it is not a column header. It's actually within the table. So the column headers are actually above. We have to create like a lot of space above in order to sort of populate all of this. And these are based on based on formulas. And so when it comes to Excel tables, the column headers, you cannot put formula in there. You have to just shift it above, and that's how come the column headers are showing here. And we have the data set assets, headers showing in here. So we had to find a way of promoting the header. So we simply promoted the header to the top so that the headers will now be here. And then what did we do next? We unpivoted. We unpivoted all of this. So basically we select this, we select that, and we unpivot other columns. So that's exactly what we did. So it became like this. And so we have the equipment, the location, and then it comes as an attribute and value. So we needed to just rename the column headers, right? So we renamed them. Okay, so eventually it became like this: equipment, location, date, and scan. And then we created our dimension tables, which are just like a list of scanners, and then the locations, which is a list of locations. And then we loaded it to the data model. Okay, so after we were done, what else did we do? We went to Power Pivot to establish the relationship. As you can see, the calendar table is here, the list of location, the list of scanners, and the relationship is one to many, which implies that this will filter this report. This can filter this data set, which is a fact table. This also can filter the data set, which is a fact table. All right, and then we are done with it. Okay, so the next thing we did was to create all our measures. So we come to manage measure, and these are just measures that we created, and the measures are looking at every time you select a date, it should give us the week within that period, the week numbers report, the month periods report. So that's what we did. We calculated the daily scans, which is simply sum of the column numbers, right? And that's it. There's no error. And then we move on to the monthly scans. So the monthly scan, we use some complex DAX measures. We use a VAR, which was a selected date. So we need to provide, like, select a date, and the data we're trying to select is a max of the calendar dates. And then we return to ensure that this name is available to use, because every time you use a VAR, you need to close it with a return in there. And then we use a calculate. So we calculate the total scan, applying a filter, and the filter is to filter the entire calendar table, and then the year should equal to the selected year's value. So selected year became relevant because we're going to be using the date that we select in our report. So every time we select a date, which is a selected date, the year should be equal to it, and then the month also should be equal to the month. So we're trying to keep them consistent within that particular time frame, and so we get a monthly scan in there. So we did the same thing for the weekly also, because they wanted weekly. We did the same thing for the yearly. So this is actually a DAX formula that we used, and this formula is very important. So if you need this formula, join our community. I can share this formula with you. So how did that translate on our summary report? If you look here, every time we select the date, is going to give us the week in perspective, the month in perspective, and then the annual. Annual is basically the year function of this, which is 2026. Is going to give us everything within the year in terms of like cumulative, right? So let's look at the calculations. There's a lot of calculations going on in here. So this is actually our calculations. We brought in all these reports. So the daily report is here, the monthly report, the weekly, and then the monthly, and then the yearly. They're all in here. And then we also did the same thing for the location, the same thing for in terms of daily, weekly, and monthly, and yearly. And then we created additional pivot tables for the dashboard. So that's pretty much it. Okay, so this is a very specialized work that we completed for a user based on a very simple, simple skeletal design like this. So if you want to upgrade your template and you are, thinking of how to go about it, we can help you conceptualize the idea, fine-tune the idea, give you our data expertise, our insight from a data standpoint, how you need to structure your template so that you can be able to collect the data. Okay, so that is it, guys. I'm going to see you guys in another video. Bye for now. Cheers.